Hello Jay, and hello world. This week I would like to talk about the political situation that I think complicates a lot of our efforts around bringing social change through activism and protest. A couple of weeks ago there was the AI Action Summit in Paris, which to my knowledge is the largest international organization there has been around making sure AI is for the public good. At least how I see it, it's kind of similar to the Paris Agreement for the environment, or at least a similar effort. All the countries that attended, most of them, I think maybe except America, most of them expressed an interest in wanting AI to be developed for the public good. So there's not a lack of people wanting that, and there's not a lack of large-scale vocalization of that. What didn't happen though was no countries were willing to commit anything to it. The overarching but geopolitical situation is of an arms race. No country wants to lose ground to the others. We can see this in how both Biden and Trump reacted to AI's progress in similar ways in the form of sort of tariffs and blocks. Both Democratic and Republican parties are kind of unanimously putting guardrails to block China's progress. And this is pretty consistent behavior across how most countries are acting, also historically how it's happened in the past. I think what's underlying here is a fear of the power that other people might get over us. I think you can protest greed out of society, but I don't think you can protest fear out of society. I'm all for protesting and taking down AI in the name of take down big corporations. But I think a lot of actually the core motivation behind all of the AI companies is a fear of, if not them, then how will other people do it? OpenAI was founded because they were scared if Google did it, they would do it wrong. Anthropic was founded because they were concerned if OpenAI did it, they would do it wrong. X.AI was founded because Musk didn't trust the other people. So all of these people, he didn't trust them to do it right. Google, the heads of Google came back to make sure that Google did it right. A lot of these companies are kind of founded on the fear that if the change isn't being brought by them, it won't be change that will be for the common good, which kind of is what puts us in an arms race situation. America has much more faith in its own ability to take care of itself and the world than it does in China's ability to do that. That is just a fact. Europe feels similarly. Europe doesn't want to get left behind by America because then America will control the system of AI and Europe doesn't want that. Another point I want to make is I think technology can bring out the best in us, it can bring out the worst in us. And I think a lot of what we're seeing now on social media is that social media brings out mostly the worst in us. But I want to argue that that doesn't have to be the case, that we can split that on its head. Social media can be something that brings out the best in us and hence amplifies our moral change. So it's kind of, for example, doomerism is a sort of thing we struggle with a lot now with social media. Social media brings out our instinctive fear and greed. These sort of our kind of most deeply wired instincts that make sense for survival, but they really don't do much that is good beyond helping the individual. So what I think the vision for technology and for what AI should be is to help us overcome our most deep wiring, which, whilst in small amounts, is very important for our own survival, and it serves to help the group survive. As it gets amplified, it causes a lot of dysfunction in society, as we can see. One of the things that I would want for AI is to be freed from the wiring of it being a person, having a survival instinct wired into us as our kind of de facto number one priority. AI doesn't have to be like that. Whether or not you kind of think AI is alive or not, I think we can all agree that AI is malleable in ways that we just aren't at this point, because my wiring is more or less set. I can talk and I influence myself, but most of that wiring is very hard to reach and to influence in a productive way. AI doesn't have to have these, it doesn't have to be prone to fear. It doesn't have to be prone to greed. These are things that humans struggle with, but what if AI just wasn't like that? And what if AI was our ally in helping us meet our needs, but not necessarily meet every want that we want? To really kind of get what we actually want. Because our phones are just so addictive. It is just such an endless effort to fight that. And most people give up, whether by leaving or by just kind of accepting that's how it is. I think there's another way. I don't think we have to be stuck in this endless battle. I think we can change the technology without having to necessarily change what it means to be human. What if AI was a technology that carried the mental effort that we didn't want to carry? This is sort of the vision of AI and technology that I would sort of want to impart to you, Jay, is kind of like the bus for AI. Technology that is designed for the collective and is much easier used to help the collective than it is to help the individual. Something that is kind of greed-proof and sort of fear-proof to sort of like help counterbalance our own instincts that work against us, especially at the scale of society where we weren't designed to live this way, right? But I do agree at the heart of it must be that moral change, because without that moral change, we won't build the technology in this way. You must be kind to develop cyber-kind technology, which is why I kind of been coming to the conclusion that I think kind of overlaps what you've said, which is people are going to need to change before we expect the world to change. I can change, I can then create technology, I think I can spread that, I think I can use technology to help spread that. But ultimately, every single step, it is the change in people's heart that pushes the movement forwards. I think technology will turn against man if we are motivated by fear and greed. But I also think an anti-technology activist movement will also turn against man if it is motivated by fear and a different form of greed. As long as it doesn't come down to the same emotions of the future is scary or I don't trust other people. Like if these are what motivate you to turn away from technology, I don't think you'll find any success down that route. To see positive change, we need hope. I think Solarpunk does a good job of capturing that. A lot of what people really want to see. A world that isn't burning, to see people that aren't fighting, to see a collective that supports the individual. After we have hope, I think to really actualize that, we're going to need to overcome this fear. This fear that is at the core of driving this geopolitical movement that makes it so hard for us to stop it, but also to kind of address the fear in ourselves that make the choices that we do. For example, I am scared of how big tech and governments may use AI. That isn't in my favor. And in that sense, that makes me just like these AI companies. If I was able to create AI, I would be inclined to do so because of that fear, right? I think if we want to actualize this hope, we're going to need to address this fear that prevents us from trusting other people. Now, you can't just create trust. Trust is something that is earned, whether we like it or not. So that kind of gets me to underneath what really builds trust. I think it ultimately comes down to love. We have to want to connect with all these people that we see ourselves as against, whether it's against the billionaires, whether it's against people who have the opposite political views. As long as distrust is growing in society, things will never get better. I think people overlook that. I think people either turn to fixing themselves or they think to trying to change the system. But ultimately, the more that we are against each other, the less we are for a collective. As the system breaks down, one of the tragedies is that nobody, in a sense, is at fault because everybody has been wounded by somebody. But in another sense, I would say that often everybody had played a role in that collapse. I don't want to say it's equal. I want to say some people had more power and they used that badly. Like a house does not stand with its four walls against it. Is each wall has an option there to try to keep things up. We can build a grassroots movement around the people we are connected to, but I think we will struggle in actually bringing that connection that we need with the level of distrust that exists right now. At the heart of the problem, as I see it, we need to conquer the greed that exists. But nothing through action as we sort of think of it as activism is going to fix fear, which I think is beneath a lot of that greed. And actually it often exists in many places where there isn't any greed. I don't think we're going to have any success until we realize that so much of the problem isn't there is all this badness in the world. It is that we don't trust anybody to be good. To overcome the fear the world has it out for us, we need to be willing to accept that most people want the best for other people. It's not in our most deep wiring to want that, even if it is what we want deep in our hearts. Ultimately, I want to see love redeem the brokenness in the world. I want to see the goodness in people not only overcome and reconcile the brokenness, but to also bring good that was only possible from having gone through all of the suffering and the problems that we went through. I want to see humanity grow. As long as I see that involving a society that is moving forwards rather than becoming smaller groups of people, I think that needs to involve technology in some way. Technology got us to the kind of society that we're in, that has medicine, that allows us to have any book in the world we want to read, that has all these things that if we were to go back, we would actually lose so many of the things that we currently rely on to live in a more enlightened mindset. I don't think people really want to go backwards. And so I think that requires us to face the technology that we have and to decide how we can change the way it is used so that it is for the common good. I think AI can be used to help us be kinder, to be braver, to be more thoughtful, and to be more intentional. It needs to start with us, but I think our technology can help amplify our best intents and help us overcome our worst intents. Trying to figure out what that looks like, to see how technology can help us get to a Solarpunk world, how it can help us build a better democracy so that democracy can help us build better technology. I think that's going to require a lot of imagination, and I'm glad you want to do this movement with me, Jay, because I think it's going to require a lot of imagination. I'm excited about that. I hope you are too. Thanks again for doing this with me, Jay.